You know, people talk all the time about Deep Space Nine being the darkest of the Berman-era Star Trek shows. The occupation storylines, the political realism, the moral complexity, all that. But the thing nobody really talks about, the thing that tells you everything without a single line of dialogue, is the wardrobe. You know, they say in animation that nothing is in an animated episode or feature film unless it was intended, unless it was by design. The same thing with wardrobe. Think back to The Next Generation. Bright, primary colors, high collars. These people walk onto the bridge like superheroes. You know, those tight, near spandex looking, bodysuits. The Enterprise D wasn't just a starship. It was a flying utopia, a galaxy-class cruise liner with a warp core, a paradise with phasers, and the uniforms reflected that confidence. They weren't just clothes. They were a declaration. The Federation is here! Everything's under control! But DS9, Deep Space Nine? Deep Space Nine walks on screen and the first thing you see is the black. It's not an accent. It's not a trim. It's the whole identity of the uniform. Muted shoulders, those once domineering bright colors are now relegated to just shoulder boards. The darker body almost blending in to the metal of the station, where the Next Generation said, "We're heroes!" Deep Space Nine says, "We're not sure what's waiting for us, and we're not wearing red spandex to find out." This isn't a cruise liner anymore. This is the frontier. Deep Space Nine's uniform is more than a costume. The sets themselves. Look at the backdrop of Deep Space Nine itself. It blends in with the background of space almost seamlessly. But these choices, whether it's the set design, and in this case in particular, the uniforms, it's foreshadowing. A subtle announcement that Starfleet has left the carpeted comforts of the Federation and stepped into the unknown. Political tension, war trauma, moral compromise, and the shadow of the Dominion lurking just beyond the wormhole. Where the Next Generation says, "We are enlightened superheroes," Deep Space Nine says, "We have no idea what's coming, and neither does Starfleet." The dominant black of the jumpsuit isn't just darker fabric. It's a narrative signal, a visual warning. You know, when you're watching a movie and the high-pitched violin strings start playing, warning of impending doom? This is the wardrobe equivalent. Color psychology at work. And if that's not enough to convince you, take a look at this scene from the first episode of Deep Space Nine with Julian Bashir's naivete on full display while wearing the Next Generation uniform, and contrast it to any other point in the series, but specifically in the midst of the Dominion War.
Frontier medicine, Major. I wanted this. The farthest reaches of the galaxy. One of the most remote outposts available. This is where the adventure is. This is where heroes are made. Right here. In the wilderness.
Julian Bashir delivers the line. He says the words, frontier, wilderness. He even goes on to say, where heroes are made. If you failed to see it visually, now you've heard it. Deep Space Nine is the unknown. He makes the bold proclamation while still wearing the Next Generation hero uniform. Bright, optimistic, and as I said earlier, contrast that to later in the series, how he portrays his character in, at first, the dominating black jumpsuit, and later when Deep Space Nine incorporated the movie uniforms of the Next Generation. Those later portrayals of Bashir's character is a weary, tired, not broken, but humbled professional. Bashir arrives on the station wearing the classic TNG uniform with the confidence only a fresh academy graduate could summon. It's in this moment this speech, in that moment, he is a next generation character, optimistic, untested, dreaming of adventure like it's a brochure for Starfleet recruitment. But Deep Space Nine is the great humbler. As seasons pass, that same man, transitioning from the Next Generation uniform soon after this scene into the Deep Space Nine jumpsuit, looks different inside and out. Not broken, not cynical, but tempered, like steel held to a flame. The bright shoulder of the black bodysuit, it's dirty, it's worn, it's subdued. Bashir's posture, his expressions, his tone, all subtly worn by war, moral dilemmas, Section 31, the cost of leadership. The uniform becomes a mirror. Same fabric, same color schemes, roughly. Different man. And that evolution is the bridge into the story's real point. How Deep Space Nine reshapes not just characters, but Starfleet's self-image. Which brings us back to Benjamin Sisko. Because Sisko isn't just the protagonist. He's the transition point between the Next Generation, their ideal, and the Deep Space Nine reality. He wears both uniforms across the series, not merely as costume changes, but as thematic markers. Sisko's mission isn't just the Federation's frontier outpost. It's the frontier of identity, the frontier of faith. When he becomes the emissary, he steps into a second frontier, one the Next Generation never dared approach. The spiritual unknown. Not technobabble, not anomalies, but prophecy, destiny, metaphysics, and myth woven directly into a Starfleet captain's personal arc. Sisko becomes the embodiment of Deep Space Nine's entire thesis. A Starfleet officer navigating the political unknown. A father navigating the emotional unknown. And an emissary navigating the cosmic and spiritual unknown. His shift between uniforms represents that transformation. The Next Generation's clean, bright science on one shoulder, and Deep Space Nine's darker, messier reality on the other. Sisko stands between two worlds, literally and symbolically, making him the true lens through which we watch Starfleet grow up. This is the first of 3 videos that are going to be focusing specifically on Benjamin Sisko. This video focused on how color choice and wardrobe tells the story. The next video is going to focus also on the uniform selections and how it also tells the story. And we'll wrap up the third part with I'm just going to leave you hanging. I may hint at it at the conclusion of the second video. If you would, like, subscribe, share, comment. I appreciate your time. Let me know your opinion or your background and experience in colors, uniform selection, wardrobe selection, and how it propels the story. Whether you have written a story, whether you've been in stage productions or television movie productions. I'd like to know more, and I'm certain that anybody else watching this would probably like to know more about what it is that you contributed. Have a great day.